Those stories shortly, but first tonight, a breakthrough on the National Disability Insurance Scheme. A day proved to be a very long time in politics today. It started with the PM and the Premiers at war over the NDIS and ended with an apparent agreement over two trial sites to be established in New South Wales and Victoria. For disability campaigners in WA, it was a welcome bit of good news after the disappointment of the COAG impasse earlier in the week. But the question still remains, what will it happen here, and if so, when? Jackie Softly is the parent of a disabled son and a long-time campaigner for disabled services and support in this state. I spoke with her earlier. Jackie Softly, welcome to 7:30 WA. The Prime Minister and the Premiers were at each other's throats at the start of the day. There now seems to have been a breakthrough with New South Wales and Victoria both seemingly agreeing to host these trials. Now, after COAG, you were disappointed and angry. How are you feeling now?
Absolutely, I was very disappointed and angry, just like all of the other people with disabilities and their families across Australia in the areas that weren't getting the trial sites. I've only just heard the news about the good news. It seems from that New South Wales and Victoria look like they're coming on board. So that's really great. It seems like progress. I really hope that we can see similar sort of progress with Western Australia, but I don't think that's looking too hopeful just right now. It's
quite a big turnaround in the space of 24 hours, though, isn't it? It makes you wonder whether it's going to be that simple from here on, because I can only imagine that there's a huge amount of detail to get nailed down before those sites go ahead.
Yes, look, it's a hugely complex issue. You know, there will be enormous amount of work over quite a long period of time. But I think that the problem yesterday, it was difficult to hear actually what was happening, the real details, but it did seem that it was getting bogged down in party politics, and I think that that's what makes people more angry than anything else, that our politicians are not listening to what people have to say, but putting other things ahead of that.
Now, there was a huge reaction, wasn't there, in the days after COAG, particularly from people like yourselves, the families of disabled people. Do you think that might have shifted the politicians' thinking?
I'd like to think it did, and certainly if we don't see too much progress in the days to come, I think you'll see a lot more reaction. And we hope that if we have to take more action, that they'll certainly listen to that. But, you know, people have been talking about this for years, and people have been lobbying and rallying and writing their stories. 6,500 stories were presented at the COAG meeting. They didn't look at that.
Now, your son Tom's nearly 28, I think.
Yes.
Now, you've been waiting 28 years for an answer to this question about the future of his support and the certainty of that support once you're no longer able to care for him.
Yes.
Do you feel as though you are closer to getting that answer today?
No, I don't. And I think that for me was the greatest disappointment. I started asking the question the week that Tom was born, what's going to happen to him when we're not around to look after him anymore? 28 years later, I shouldn't still be asking the same question, but until we actually have that certainty that people have an entitlement to funding, and that they will be guaranteed that throughout their life, because that's actually what the NDIS is meant to be, a lifetime care and support scheme. Until we have that here in Western Australia, I'm not going to have any peace of mind for the future.
The Prime Minister says that she's optimistic that these sites will go ahead in New South Wales and Victoria. How far is it from those trials going ahead to actually getting the scheme in place and giving you that certainty? Is it months? Is it years?
I imagine that it's going to be over a few years if they follow the proposal in the Productivity Commission's recommendations. It will be a few years. I just feel that here in Western Australia, with our government saying, you know, we're going to do our own thing here, that we're a lot further behind than potentially all the other states.
Now, the government here has its own program called My Way. What do you know about that, and is that a comparable scheme to the NDIS?
Okay, My Way has not actually been completed yet. Contrary to what we're hearing, it's not in operation anywhere. We understand it's going to be piloted maybe later this year, in a few small locations around Perth.
So it's not even at the trial stage yet?
Absolutely not, no. It is still being, the details are still being worked out, as far as anyone knows. It hasn't been developed at the level of consultation anywhere near that of the NDIS, which was very lengthy, very comprehensive.
But aren't there consultations going on now?
There are information sessions going on now. I haven't been to one, but I am told that people go along and that they're given some information, but it isn't
So that's about telling, really, not asking.
Yes, and detail is a bit thin on the ground. But what we do know is, I guess, look, the criteria for me, for my way, for it to be really what we need, will be that it would have that certainty, that funding will be in place, that the person will have an entitlement throughout their life. So it's got to be a sustainable scheme. And that was the whole thing about the NDIS, was that it had to be a scheme that the nation could sustain, because in reality, with a growing number of people with disabilities, as we're all ageing, all of those kinds of issues, the way that disability services are funded in each of the states currently, it's not sustainable. It just can't happen. And the Productivity Commission said that, and that's why they've looked at this national scheme that can be sustained. So that's really crucial. As far as I understand it, at the moment there's no new money going into My Way, and it also doesn't expand to other people. So it's only those people who already have funding, and it's going to be used in a different way. So people will have more control over how it's used, which is a good thing. That's part of the NDIS, but it isn't going to give anything extra to people.
So there's no expanded eligibility, and of course if it's a state-based system there's no portability.
Absolutely, portability is a huge thing. Currently, if you have a disability and you have a funding package in your state, if you move to another state, you might get that for 12 months if you're lucky, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get anything comparable anywhere else. So if you live in WA, you're stuck in WA.
Jackie Softley, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks.